Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week.
A lot of people who can afford to pay for private therapists would have a therapist even when their mental health is perfect, because it's like your physical health, you go to the gym to get fitter, but if you're already fit, you go to the gym to maintain your fitness.
And I guess as a GP, you see that if you come face to face with somebody who may be having some struggles and maybe have had some struggles for a period of time, better this path than for them to not come forward and then in a year's time be talking to you about potentially suicidal feelings or maybe a serious mental illness.
If you expose yourself to one big appropriate stress every day, such as a freezing cold shower, then your body's less likely to overreact to those minor things that we stress about too much.
And I'll be reminding you how you can make connections with mental health organisations within your community. It's Mental Health Monday.
Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
Tackling the stigma.
And it's a very happy new year from me, Mick Coyle. Welcome to Mental Health Monday and the first of 2021. I told you we'd be back. Hope you had a great break. Hope you're feeling recharged and the batteries are reset, ready to go for a new year. Yeah, we'll see how things play out. Of course, the conversations continue weekly on Mental Health Monday, and another conversation maybe for people who are looking to get their head into order this year, maybe tackle some of the issues that they've not been able to deal with in the past, that they've not been able to make time for in the past, and maybe haven't been aware of the services in the past. I thought we'd start a conversation today with the TV Dr Zoe Williams. Now, she's absolutely brilliant in terms of talking about mental health and knowing where to turn to. She's a GP herself, so she knows about those conversations, but also she knows about the ins and the outs and the wherefores and the whys around seeking help within the NHS. And there's a new service called Help Us, Help You, which is looking at a million and one different health aspects and asking people to get in contact if they need support. And of course, that's about mental health as well. So there are talking therapy services available through the NHS. Now, you can self-refer or you can go through your GP. Now, Dr. Zoe will set out all the details around this as part of the conversation, and you can get involved yourself, as I say, via your GP, or indeed a self-referral system. Now, I've just typed in NHS talking therapies into Google, and actually it just came up straight away. So I think as much as anything, it's a really straightforward thing to go on the internet and do. But if you want to have a conversation with your GP first, absolutely. If you want to check out the podcast first, well, here it comes. Dr. Zoe Williams talking about what's been a difficult year in 2020, hopefully opening up in 2021.
Yeah, so it's an NHS campaign really to alert people to the fact that there are services that are open, that are available, that are confidential and that are free to support people with their mental health. We know, it's not a surprise to people to hear that more people are struggling with things like depression and anxiety than ever before. And as a GP, I'm certainly experiencing that. I'm having more conversations with patients about mental health than ever before. But lots of people don't know, they're not aware that these services are available and they're really easy to access as well. And the two main ways in which people can access support for talking therapy is either going through their GP, letting their GP know what's happening and their GP can refer them, or they can even bypass their GP if they want to and go straight to the website, the NHS website, and self-refer to a local provider for talking therapy to help them.
What does talking therapy mean and what would it look like and sound like?
Yeah, so for things like depression and anxiety, one of the main forms of treatment is talking therapy, and that comprises mostly of counselling and of CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy. So that would be signing up online. Initially, you'd have an assessment with somebody who would determine perhaps what's the best type of therapy for you, and then usually that will be a course of therapy. So you'd be linked up with a therapist who's appropriate for what your needs are, and mostly this therapy is now being delivered virtually, so either a video consultation or a telephone. You'd have a number of sessions over a period of time. So for example, it could be that you have 6 sessions weekly for 6 weeks. You could have 8 sessions fortnightly over the course of several months. It depends on what your needs are and what's available in your local area. And sometimes actually people prefer to do self-help. So there are courses, there are booklets, there are web-based courses where people can do self-guided CBT and therapy as well. So there's a whole range of different options which will be suited depending on the person's needs.
When I was growing up watching like American TV shows, say the 90s, people would always talk about speaking to their therapist, and it seemed quite a normalised thing in the United States. I think maybe in the United Kingdom, there's still this thing of if you said you had a therapist, people would think, oh, what's going on there? But actually what you just described there, the appointment, speaking to somebody, would be the same as, having a bit of physio or, going to see a dentist. It sounded like quite a normal thing to do.
Exactly. And I think if we think of Friends as an example of a sitcom and, seeing their therapist was just a normal part of self-care. And, therapists, a lot of people who can afford to pay for private therapists would have a therapist even when their mental health is perfect, because it's like your physical health, you go to the gym to get fitter, but if you're already fit, you go to the gym to maintain your fitness. Now, the service on the NHS doesn't quite stretch to people who are in perfect mental health to keep them there. But for anyone, even if it's mild depression, even if you feel that your mental health problems are just starting all the way through to you've got to the point where you're not coping, then this is a service that is available. It's there, it's up, it's running. And, the waiting times in the NHS can often be something that puts people off. For this particular service, the talking therapies, they aim to get the majority of patients seen within 6 weeks, which, could be better, but actually 6 weeks is not that bad. But another reason for people, if they think they're struggling and they think that they will benefit from support, don't delay, get yourself referred, the sooner the better.
And I guess as a GP, you see that if you come face to face with somebody who may be having some struggles and maybe have had some struggles for a period of time, better this path than for them to not come forward and then in a year's time be talking to you about potentially suicidal feelings or maybe a serious mental illness.
Exactly. And, we've seen lots of people this year, sadly, with suicidality. And it does sometimes make me think, had these people been able to access the right support at the right time, how many lives could be saved? Things can spiral out of control so quickly. And I think with all the additional pressures at the moment, people not seeing their family and friends, the financial struggles people are going through, unemployment. And these are things that, hopefully now with the vaccine, the restrictions around the pandemic, in a few months, these will start to ease. But the knock-on effect of everything we've been through this year, we're going to feel that for many months and even years to come. So this is a service that's available and is actually being invested in. Even now, already, they've made more appointments available. I think with the world of talking therapy going now predominantly online, it's meant that the NHS has been able to work with new digital providers, and in the next few years they're investing more heavily in it as well, because they recognise that more and more people are going to need this type of support.
Is it an easier sell for you as a GP to say to somebody, okay, I've listened to what you're going through here. Sometimes people are wary of medication or wary of something that maybe they don't understand. Does the talking therapy allow you as a GP to offer them something that they are more likely to accept because we talk and we can? Yes. People can talk, can't they?
Yeah, I think people often feel apprehensive about talking therapy, about opening up. And, some forms of counselling are very much that deep dive into your life and your background, whereas types of therapy like CBT don't always require you to go into your history and it can be very much what's going on right now and thinking about looking at how your actions and your thoughts and your feelings interact and making some changes. But, as a GP, our job really is to assess the individual in front of us. For some people, medication is a really good option. For some people, talking therapy is a really good option. For some people, actually, self-help measures, so exercise, particularly group exercise, has been shown in studies to be as effective as some types of antidepressant medication. So it really depends on the individual. And of course, often it's the case that some people will benefit from more than one of those options. So it might be that talking therapy alongside antidepressant medication, you're much more likely to get a better result than either one of those on their own. An exercise program alongside talking therapy, for example, might be suitable for another person. So I do, you can self-refer online, which I think is a great option because a lot of people don't find it difficult even to talk to their GP. But my advice to people who feel that they can is to pick up the phone, have a consultation over the phone with your GP and explain to them what's going on, because we can really help to guide you as to what's best for you, and also give you some tips and some ideas of things you can be doing immediately whilst you're waiting for that therapy to get started.
I'm glad you made the point there about medication might be part of somebody's solution, because I think there's still almost a stigma around sometimes the idea of taking, medication. But as you've suggested, that it can be part of the solution as well. I'm also really sort of impressed within the mental health world, Dr. Zoe, around sort of community responses and those sort of like arts groups and drama clubs and sporting organisations, which I guess as a GP, I don't know if you refer directly to them or to services which can refer, but it's quite strange that from a physical point of view, you might refer on to, somebody who's an expert in whatever it might be, bones or joints or anything like that. But then to refer to like a drama club or like a sports organisation, that must be quite weird, that, as a doctor.
It's something that I am a huge fan on. So what you've described there, it's called social prescribing. And there's a lot of evidence, and this evidence is new and it's emerging, and there's more and more of it coming our way, that sometimes the best treatment for a person is not a drug or a therapy. It's actually something that is available in their local community. So it might be a singing group, or it might be a walking group, or it might be a drama class. So for things like mental health, but also for a lot of physical health conditions, an example would be singing for people who have COPD, which is a lung condition. So by singing, not only are they exercising their lungs and increasing their lung capacity, but also often having that social interaction with other people who have the same condition as you, and getting that social support. And simple things like, how do you use your inhaler? Oh, I use it like this. Oh, I've been using mine wrong. And just having that interaction can be really helpful. So social prescribing is something that I am a huge fan on. It's something we're going to see more and more in the NHS. And I think it's something that patients really, really like as well.
But that speaks, doesn't it, of a world of isolation that actually we're having now to find the means to connect these sorts of people with organisations. Often they might even be like a church club round the corner might have these services, but unless you get pointed in that direction, you don't necessarily know that they're there. And I think maybe that speaks more of a society that's become a little bit disjointed, that doesn't allow people to make those connections, despite all the opportunities we have to connect with people on social media and things like that, in 2020 and now 2021.
Yeah, I think there's more than one big C of 2020. I think the other two big C's are community. People have re-engaged with their communities, and it's something that I think has been lost in the past few decades, that we don't interact so much with our community. The world's become such a small place. But certainly during that first lockdown, many of the stories of people going around and seeing their neighbours and re-engaging with the community and wanting to help those less fortunate, whether it be collecting food or volunteering. And the other one is compassion, and how important compassion is, and being compassionate for others, but also being compassionate towards ourselves, just giving ourselves a break. I think just getting through this year is a big enough achievement on its own. So I think, community and compassion and doing things for others, that charitability as well. So being charitable and doing things for others has been proven to obviously help the person that you're helping, but also help you and your mental health. So yeah, compassion, community, and charitability. There we go. The three C's.
Important. Forget coronavirus or COVID. They're the three C's that we're taking on board. Absolutely.
Exactly.
I wanted to mention that though, because of course, throughout that sort of Christmas period, and then moving in now to the new year, we enter these sort of dark months, don't we? The January, the Februaries, and the Marches, which can be difficult times. Do you think there might be a concern that those people who've kind of put their head down and gone, you know what, I'm firing on through coronavirus, I don't care about the lockdown, fine, I'll follow the rules, but it's not going to get me down, and I'm going to carry on with maybe running or cooking, but they've baked so much banana bread now that it's pouring out of the freezer, and Christmas wasn't great because they couldn't have the big parties. Do you think there's a risk that actually there might be almost like a mental health lull in 2021 where a little bit of fatigue kicks in, if you like?
Yeah, I 100%. I think every year there is a lull after Christmas and New Year, the January, February, those dark, short days, those winter months. I think it's the 12th of January, that's meant to be the most depressing day of the year. So absolutely, I think this year, we do have that shining light at the end of the tunnel. Since we know we've got the vaccine, we know that this is going to come to an end at some point in the not too distant future. So there is that. But I think people's resilience this year, people's ability to cope, some people, like you say, are still hanging in there. They're like, I'm still going, I'm still okay. But we all have a threshold at which we might tip over into not coping. And I'm not afraid to say I struggled myself. Sort of back in the summer, I suffer with anxiety, and I reached a point where I needed to get some support and make some changes. I think working in the media is a strain, as I'm sure you felt as well, strain, because you're constantly living and breathing coronavirus. So I think it's important that people just check in with themselves regularly, and obviously check in with the people that you care about around you, and ask yourself really honestly, am I just coping, or am I thriving, or where am I at? And if you think that you benefit from some help and support, just to know that the NHS is there, it's open, these services are up and running. They have been throughout the whole of 2020, and they're actually being increased, and it's really simple to self-refer through your GP or on the NHS website.
And actually, quite a thing to make a New Year's resolution to look into the idea of a talking therapy, and to do so through the new NHS service.
It's just a part of self-care. It's a part of looking after yourself, in the same way that many people will make New Year's resolutions to start running for their physical health, or to sign up to a gym, or to get that physiotherapy for their bad back that they've been promising themselves for years. And this is exactly the same, but it's looking after your brain. Essentially, the chemicals in your brain can get disrupted when you've been through trauma, and many people are affected by that. So having a course of talking therapy is no different really to having a course of physiotherapy or going on a fitness course. So people should think about it in the same way. And I think it's actually a really sensible, a really good New Year's resolution to make. But just bear in mind, there will be a few weeks waiting list. So maybe don't wait for the 1st of January. You might as well get that referral, self-refer yourself now, and then timing-wise, you should be offered that at some point in January, hopefully.
And in regard to that, there may be people listening to this now who are thinking, I wonder if that might be suitable for a husband, a partner, a family member. What are those things that maybe people should look out for that might suggest to them that a family member or a loved one might benefit from talking therapy?
There are lots of signs that somebody's struggling with their mental health. If they're less interested in the things they're usually interested in, if they're sort of not sleeping or sleeping too much, if they're just not engaging in the forms of activities that they normally do, or they just seem down. And I think, especially if it's somebody that we know well, intuitively we can tell when somebody's struggling, but it can be really difficult to start that conversation. It can be especially difficult if you think, well, if they tell me that they are depressed, then what do I do? So I think the awareness that this service is available for everybody, it can give that additional confidence. My advice is, if you're worried about somebody who you live with or who you care about, who you work with, just be brave enough to ask them the question, how are you? But not in the way we know, not like, oh, how are you? You can start off with that, but it's like, but how are you really? And don't be afraid to tell them whatever you've been thinking or feeling. So you might say to somebody, I just want to share with you, I've been feeling as though you're struggling recently, or I think you might be struggling, and I just want to ask you really honestly, how are you? And if they confide in you, that could be that first step for them, that first really difficult step of admitting that they're struggling. And then you can follow up with, well, there is an NHS service, it's free, here's how to access it. Speak to your GP, go to the NHS website. It's as simple as that. And, that is probably the biggest gift that you can give somebody this Christmas.
And in terms of yourself there, you mentioned, some of the issues that you've been dealing with in the summer. Is there anything that now that you use as almost a weapon against some of those feelings of anxiety, and something that, you sort of have to continue, you almost have to practice it yourself, don't you, to make sure that you stay sort of above the line that you want to be at?
Yeah, so my weapon has always been physical activity, exercise. I feel very lucky that I'm someone who actually enjoys exercise. But even when I feel unmotivated and I feel like I can't be bothered or I'm busy, My mental health, if I don't do any exercise for a few days, I feel my mental health dip. So I'm somebody who has mental health problems, but I usually keep them in check with exercise. But something new that I've discovered this year, like many people, we know that meditation is good for us, but I've really struggled with it. My meditation is my exercise. So anything that involves sitting still, even for 10 minutes, I'm looking at my watch thinking, when is this going to be over? I've got things to do. But I discovered this year that being by water really helps. So I've got a local park and there's a little pond. And when I feel that I just need to chill out and just reconnect with nature, and it sounds really cheesy, but if I just sit by that water and just focus on the water for 10 minutes, it kind of really takes my stress levels down and just helps me, I think, just get some perspective back.
See, I thought you were going to say you'd taken up surfing and you were like out there on the Atlantic Ocean, but actually even the proximity to like a pond, a small body of water, that still does the trick.
I mean, I'm in central London, so that's the best I can do. If I lived by the ocean, then surfing would be the thing. And, hearing more and more about people doing cold water swimming. Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, I made a programme with him last year, and I set him the task of submerging himself in cold water every day for 2 months. Whether that, if he could get to somewhere to actually get in the water, great, but otherwise he had a cold shower every morning, and it's over a year now and he's done it every day. He hasn't missed a day, and he says it's changed his life.
Really? See, that's the sort of thing that would put me off coming to your GP practice.
But I'm not going to get in that pond in my local park. That's a step too far. But if I lived by the ocean, then cold water swimming, the evidence that's coming up around that to benefit people, mental health, physical health, it's quite astonishing.
And actually those campaigns you see now to bring back the Lidos that we used to have all of these things, in seaside towns, that they'd be there and it'd be the seawater that would wash in and wash out, and we all got a bit, we want air conditioned gym spaces and things like that, but actually we've lost those facilities now, and there are various campaigns to bring some of them back that people can get that opportunity.
Yeah, and for those of us that don't have access, you can get some of the benefits from having a freezing cold shower. So you only have to have it freezing cold for about a minute. But I think some of the science behind it is that you actually give yourself an appropriate stress response. So, we all experience stress. It's normal to experience stress, but our stress response is really designed to protect us in case we come into contact with a bear, or if we accidentally fall into a freezing cold lake. Like all those things that happen when we feel stressed, are to help us survive those scenarios. Of course, we live in a world now where we don't face bears and we don't often fall into frozen lakes. So we have rather than having occasional huge stress responses, we have little minor doses of stress all the time because we missed the bus or we spilt some milk or whatever. And we're living in this world of constant stress. And some of the science behind it is that if you expose yourself to one big appropriate stress every day, such as a freezing cold shower, then your body's less likely to overreact to those minor things that we stress about too much. So cold showers.
Cold shower.
I don't fancy it myself. I think about it often and I just think, I just don't want to, but it's evidence for those people who feel like giving it a try.
Right. I'm going to try and get, at some point in 2021, I'm going to get Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall on the programme, and he's going to tell us about his cold water experience.
Yes,
and then I'll ask him what he really thinks about you. Let's remind people once again, NHS Talking Therapies access via GPs if you want to have that first conversation, but self-referrals are available. The NHS website, and if people type in help us, help you, they'll get links to all that information as well. Dr. Zoe, thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the very best, and thanks for speaking to us on Mental Health Monday today.
Thank you so much for having me. Keep doing the great work you're doing.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for checking out Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mick Coyle. You can also find me, Mick Coyle, on Facebook as well. Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. SHOUT to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999. Thanks for downloading the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with more Mental Health Monday.